Hey everyone, we are here learning about sentence structure. And sentence structure is all about connecting independent and dependent clauses to form complete sentences. And I've copied and pasted a few parts of the English handout that you're going to become extremely familiar with. And one of those is this little box that you see right here, which is at the very beginning, and it's breaking down the English test into two different subsections. And we talked about this on the English overview video as well. So sentence structure is one of the four most common types of grammar and punctuation questions. There it is. I think of it as kind of a foundation to grammar and punctuation because some other things sort of play off of that as well. And very important to remember, there's only one correct answer for every question on the ACT, but especially in English, be thinking about how to find the only possible answer. In grammar and punctuation, we're going to treat these like little math problems. You're going to see what I mean as we get into this a little bit more. All right, here's another box that's taken directly from that handout. And there's a lot of information here. So the first thing I want to deal with is just, well, Tom, how do I know if it's a sentence structure question? Well, the answer lies in the middle. Sentence structure questions are almost always going to have something underlined in the middle of a sentence. There's some stuff before, there's some stuff after, and right in the middle, there are things underlined because that's where I'm connecting these clauses. And it's important to know how to connect the clauses. And that's why I've got this highlighted for the three ways to connect two independent clauses and the two ways to connect one independent and one dependent. It's all about the punctuation and the word choice in the very middle of the sentence. So the first thing I do is I figure out what I'm working with. Okay, it's almost like I'm figuring out the parts, and then I'm going to use those 5 ways to connect them to figure out how I put these parts together to form a complete sentence. So everything, the clauses are going to be either an independent or dependent clause. And just to make this really obvious, we're gonna do this little thing with our hands that you're going to think is kind of goofy and kindergarten-like, but it works really, really well. When we're talking about independent clauses, we're going to hold up our palm. That represents an independent clause. And then when we're talking about a dependent clause, we're going to flip that and show you the back of the hand. The back of the hand is dependent. Get it? Dependent, the back of the hand. Okay, independent, dependent. And we have to have 2 of those for a sentence structure question, right? So I'm either going to have 2 independent clauses or one of them is going to flip to a dependent. Occasionally, they're going to tack on something else, but it's really going to be this or this or this. You can't have 2 dependent clauses. That doesn't form a complete sentence. So how do I know if it's an independent or dependent clause? Well, the easiest way is to just ask yourself, is this a complete thought? The thing that I'm reading or I'm hearing, does it make sense by itself? And you'll also, and I don't want to say hear too much because you're not going to be reading this out loud, but you're going to be doing what we call subvocalizing, which is thinking about how it would sound if you read it out loud. Independent clauses, complete sentences, are like an airplane. They sort of take off and then they land again. A dependent clause doesn't do that. So a great example of an independent clause, I've got a couple here. Jim likes Pam. Short sentence, not a real fascinating sentence, but it's a short sentence. Jim likes Pam, and it comes back down to earth. Over on the other side, we've got a dependent clause. Although she dates Roy, and you hear how that kind of hangs up in the air. Although she dates Roy, that's not a complete thought, okay? If I put it at the end, I can read it a little bit differently. Jim likes Pam, although she dates Roy. Now I'm kind of coming back down to earth, but that clause, although she dates Roy, can't stand by itself. It would make sense to the reader or the audience. Once I figure out what I'm working with, when I've got the 2 parts figured out, then it's pretty simple, folks. It's just a matter of putting these together. And there's only 5 ways to do this. And they're really, really simple. If I have 2 independent clauses, look over there, what I've got highlighted on the left. I can do a period between them or a semicolon or a comma with a fanboy. Everybody knows what a fanboy is: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Independent, comma, fanboys, independent, right? But I've got to have that fanboy in there. I can't just connect 2 of these guys with a comma. That's what we call a comma splice. And I can't just go independent, fanboys, independent. I need the comma for that all to work. It's really, really specific. So those are the 3 ways to connect 2 clauses over on the left if both of them are independent. If one of those flips, if it's ID or DI, then all I use is a comma. That's it, nothing else. Walk away. Can't use a semicolon. right? Certainly can't use a period. Can't throw in a fanboy just because I want to, all right? And you can't take the fan or the comma out. So those are very, very specific ways that we combine them. One thing I wanted to go back to, and I just wanted to highlight there on this slide, this weird collection of letters. Some of you know this and you've heard this from your English teachers. Some of you have never heard this, but this is kind of like fanboys. It's an acronym that's going to help us a whole bunch on sentence structure. Abby saw a woo-woo. I don't know who Abby is. I don't know why she spells her name differently. That's fine. And I certainly don't know what a woo-woo is, but I do know that every time I start off a clause with one of these Abby words, it's automatically going to be a dependent clause. Although, because, before, if, since, after, when, as, while, until, where, unless. Folks, grab a little Post-it note, a flashcard, whatever, write those down, write them in Sharpie on your hand. I don't care, but learn those, because automatically, boom, I'm flipping to a dependent clause. And then look what I do. When I either start with a dependent clause or I end with a dependent clause, the only thing I'm doing is connecting it with a comma to an independent clause. Boom, that's it. It's that simple. Okay, let's keep going then. Let's practice a couple of these. And I've got two columns, and I deliberately didn't use any periods or capital letters at the beginning of sentences because I just want you to think about, what are you seeing, what are you reading, what are you hearing? And I've already broken these up for you, but I want to show you how closely these can be and why one is independent and why one is dependent. So the first example, the band played 2 sets. Okay, sounds great. I hope they were a good band. I hope there wasn't a cover charge. When you add in that Abby word, you create a dependent clause. So when I say when the band played 2 sets, I can't say when the band played 2 sets. I know if someone's asking you a question, when did you leave? When the band played 2 sets. That's not how this works, folks, right? That word when functions to flip that to a dependent clause. Okay, next example over on the left. Independent clause. The Aurelian Wall was built in the late 3rd century. And if you're like, I don't know what the Aurelian Wall is, that doesn't matter. I don't need to know that to make sense of this and to understand that I'm hearing a complete thought. If I change around the wording a little bit on the right, the Aurelian Wall built in the late 3rd century. Yeah, it's kind of hanging up in the air, right? And probably what I've got going on is in a positive here. Mark Johnson, and we're going to get to that in 2 more lessons. And then the last one, independent clauses don't have to be long. They just need a subject and a verb, and they need to be a complete thought. Stars form. Boom. Subject, verb, period. That's it. Forming stars. That's not a complete thought. That's a dependent clause. Okay? Let's jump into a couple more. I want you to practice these. Read these, pause me for a second, and then I'm going to show you the correct answer, and I'm going to show you why they are the correct answers. Go ahead and do that. Okay, let's look at the correct answers. All right, well, first of all, I hope you spotted the Abby word at the beginning of this one. If reading books for fun was a career, so that's definitely a dependent clause. I'd be the first one to sign up. I'd be the first one to sign up. Yep, that stands by itself. You don't need to know what you're signing up for or anything to determine whether it's an independent or dependent clause. It's just that I'm hearing and I'm seeing and I'm understanding a complete thought. So that's D, I, and D-I, comma between it. No change is correct. B and C don't work because you're putting a period or a semicolon, which, remember, are the same things on the ACT. You're putting that after a dependent clause. And that's not going to work. So B and C are the same answer. And then D is just bad. D gives me a dependent clause, then it follows with another dependent clause, and that's not a complete sentence whatsoever. On the second one, I've got 2 short little sentences, so they're both independent clauses. I could just put a period there. The correct answer is D. I'm going to put a semicolon there. Why doesn't the first one work? Because it looks fine. I went to Hy-Vee. The fruit looked amazing. What's the problem, Tom? The problem is that's 2 independent clauses with a comma and no fanboy. You just created a comma splice. I used to refer to that as the devil's punctuation. I don't know why. I guess just because it's so easy to fall into that trap. It looks fine. It sounds fine. It's no big deal. But remember, if I've got 2 of these with a comma, I need a fanboys in there. And B and C are wrong because I put a fanboy in that, and this should actually be an I right there. It should be independent, comma, fanboy, independent. And that is not, that's what I need right now. It's not going to work. Okay, let's go to the next page. So again, these are the only 5 ways to connect clauses, sentence structure. And yeah, that looks like there's a lot of words. And when you first look at it, all the letters are smaller, whatever, but I'm just giving you the same examples. And I deliberately made it really easy. And yes, if you're a fan of The Office, you know who I'm talking about. But I want you to commit these to memory, folks. I want you to know Jim likes Pam, period. Pam dates Roy, period. Okay? Period, semicolon, comma, fanboys. They're all the same thing, right? And then on the flip side, I'm adding in an Abby word. I'm creating or flipping one of these to a dependent, and then it's got to be just the comma, and that's it. Okay, that's all for now. There's a short little quiz that's going to ask you, are these independent or dependent clauses? Take that, and then there are a few questions after that that ask you to find the right answer. When you're done with that, jump into the next video lesson. It's going to be on verbs, and we'll see you there. Bye.